You know how some movies just rattle you, even weeks or even months after you've watched them? Well, buckle up. That's the exact kind of film we're going to discuss today. In the hands of a less talented director, Irreversible could have wound up being just a middle-of-the-road, standard rape revenge movie. Basically, just a French version of I Spit on Your Grave or Last House on the Left. Instead, we get a story told in such an unsettling fashion that I've been considering whether I need to rearrange my top 3 most disturbing movies I've ever seen list to make room for this one in there. So let's run through the characters and the basic plot quickly, and then I'll talk about my overall thoughts on the film and why it left me with such long-lasting uneasiness. The first person we're introduced to is this super gross and possibly naked guy sitting on the bed in his dingy apartment, or maybe a hotel room, possibly. That detail is not important, so we're just going to move on. He's droning on and on about just a bunch of random shit, and then we see that there's another guy in the room, and this guy is fully dressed. You know, like a normal human being who's having a conversation with another human being. Out of nowhere, creep number 1 is all like, hey, did you know that I went to prison a little while back? And the other guy says, oh yeah? And the first guy basically says, yeah, I had sex with my daughter. And creepy guy number 2 over here, instead of responding like a normal person and being like, all right, dude, well, I guess that's about time for me to go. He just kind of says, yeah, well, I guess these things happen, you know? Like, that's not verbatim, word for word, their conversation, but it's close enough. Then creepy guy number 2 is all like, wow, I wonder what's going on outside. It sounds all crazy. And creep number 1 nonchalantly says, yeah, that's just the rectum. It's always nuts there. And I'm trying to pay attention to what's going on visually on screen. I'm trying to keep up with reading the closed captioning, while my brain just comes to a screeching halt and is like, I'm sorry, can we rewind for a couple seconds? It's the what? This, by the way, is the last that we see of these 2 guys. They have nothing to do with the rest of the movie. I learned later on, after reading about the film, that the first creepy guy, you know, the possibly naked one, is the main character in a previous Gaspar Noe film where they essentially leave you to speculate at the end whether or not he slept with his daughter. So I guess they're closing that little loop for you and giving you a, yep, he definitely did that. Anyway, back to the movie at hand. We leave these 2 winners and follow the camera as it exits through the window. And this is where the camera work starts to get really crazy. Like a cat with a laser pointer crazy. Like, imagine the footage you would get if you strapped a GoPro to the top of this cat's head. As we get down to the street, there are police and emergency vehicles everywhere. And yes, we are actually at a gay nightclub called The Rectum. It takes a huge amount of self-control for me not to make the rectum, I hardly knew him, joke here, which I guess not that much self-control because I just made the joke. Anyway, moving on. So now we're in the club, in the rectum, if you will. And before we go any further, I need to explain who the main 3 characters are and how they relate to each other. The story in this movie is told in reverse chronological order, so you don't know anyone's names, and you don't know how they relate to each other, and everything is chaos, which is completely intentional, but it's also difficult for me to describe the plot to you if you don't have at least some of this information. So we have 2 guys, Marcus and Pierre. Marcus has a girlfriend named Alex. Alex used to date Pierre, but now they're just friends. Spoiler alert, Pierre is still madly in love with Alex. Anyway, these 2 guys have forced their way into the rectum. I guess there probably could have been a less creepy way for me to say that, but here we are. Because Alex has been raped and beaten, and these guys have been told that her attacker frequents this club. The camera, still shaking like Joe Cocker at Woodstock, follows Marcus and Pierre further and further down the stairs, stopping at every floor to randomly assault gay guys and call them every vile slang term you can possibly imagine, and then turning back to them and saying, oh, by the way, do you happen to know a guy who calls himself Latanya? Side note, Latanya means the tapeworm, which is a terrible nickname, unless you're all like, yo, I'm going to get up all in them guts and wreck your shit like tapeworms. I'm trying to make all the jokes now because a little further on, jokes are going to feel really inappropriate. We go down what seems like 100 flights of stairs, just busting into rooms where guys are doing crazy shit. Like, the best way I can describe it is get in a time machine, go back to 1987, drive to rural Alabama, find someone in their 50s or 60s and ask them what the inside of a gay club in San Francisco looks like. You got the harsh red lighting, the leather bondage gear, dudes talking about fisting each other, the whole works. We get down to what feels like it has to be the bottom level, and Marcus and Pierre have caught up to a guy that they believe to be Latanya. Spoiler alert, they've got the wrong guy. But they proceed to beat the shit out of him anyway. The guy they were actually looking for is standing off to the side smirking, and the beating goes so far that Marcus actually crushes the guy's skull with a fire extinguisher. We then get several scenes flashing further and further back in the evening where our protagonists are running through the streets, searching for anyone who can give them information about what might have happened to Alex. We find out about Latanya and the fact that he likes to hang out at the Rectum Club. We go back further and see the guys leaving the party they were at and looking for Alex, who had left early because Marcus was acting like a moron. This is when they see paramedics loading a woman into the back of an ambulance and realize that it's her. We get another flashback and we see what made Alex decide to leave the party. She walks out the front door onto the street where there is a ton of traffic. There's another woman there, and this woman tells her, you know, you'd probably be safer if you take the tunnel that goes under the street rather than try to cross here. And now we have come to the scene. If you've ever heard about this movie or read an article about it or watched one of these videos on YouTube that discuss it, this is the scene that you know about going in, and it is every bit as ruthless as you've heard that it is. Alex gets about halfway through the tunnel when she comes across what appears to be a pimp hitting a woman and yelling at her. Alex tries to slip past, hoping not to draw the man's attention, but he grabs her, and now she is all that he's focused on. So the other woman takes the opportunity to exit stage left. He goes from 0 to 100 almost immediately, and he starts saying stuff like, what are you, some rich bitch that thinks she's better than me? Yeah, he's one of those guys. She tries everything she can think of, but he just gets more and more aggressive, which eventually escalates to the rape scene that everyone knows this movie for. This is incredibly difficult to watch. The camera work, which was so chaotic in the beginning when we were watching the men's frenzied search for revenge, is now a stable, long, one-take shot. No cuts, no edits, no nothing. It literally feels like you're in the tunnel with her, watching her fight, hearing her scream, and yet you're unable to do anything about it. It feels like it takes roughly 3 hours. In reality, it's somewhere around the 10-minute mark, and finally it's over. But he decides that he's not quite through with her yet. He apparently hasn't caused enough trauma, so he smashes her face off the concrete a few times, kicks her once or twice, and then spits on her. In the interest of not having this turn into a 2-hour video, I'm going to skip fairly quickly through some of the flashback scenes that come after this. We see our group of 3, relatively happy and carefree, earlier in the night heading to the party. Alex tells the guys about a book that she's been reading, which basically says that anything that's going to happen to you in the future has already been laid out for you, and you don't get to change any of it. You just get to experience things as they happened. Like, everything is already predetermined. We, as the audience, get to remind ourselves of the fate that she is going to experience in several hours. We jump back even further and we see Alex and Marcus in their apartment. They seem relatively happy, carefree, playful, and there's some teasing about why in the hell do we have to invite Pierre, but it's all in good fun. They seem to be getting along great. We don't see a lot of these signs of the Marcus who's kind of a drunk jerk that we're going to see later at the party. Alex reveals to him that her period is late and she thinks that she might be pregnant. He isn't what I would call psyched about the news, but he's certainly not pissed off or anything. He's mostly just like, all right, well, I guess we'll see what happens. And then he leaves and Alex takes a pregnancy test. We never see the actual test, but she gets a smile on her face and kind of wraps her arms around her belly, which seems like a pretty clear indication to me that the test is probably positive. Once again, we already know her fate. We know where this evening is going. So this is just another positive thing to be destroyed by time. The final scene sees Alex laying in the grass in the park, reading the book that she was describing to the guys earlier. The sunshine is bright. There are children laughing and playing around her. It's basically a 180-degree polar opposite of what her life is going to be like roughly 12 hours later. Then the movie ends with some of the harshest strobes I have ever seen in a movie. Like, if you have any predisposition to seizures or anything like that, and you watch this film, shut it off when she is laying in the park. All you're going to miss is these strobes that will make you lose your mind. Like, I'm not epileptic, and I felt like I was going to have a friggin' seizure while I was watching it. So you get that for, I don't know, it might have been 20 or 30 seconds. And then you get the words, time destroys all things, really large on the screen. And that's where the movie ends. So let's talk for a minute about what it is that makes Irreversible so haunting. Telling the narrative in reverse is a big part about what wrecks me with this one. I think the craziness and the violence, which would normally be the climax that the audience is waiting for, like, we all want to see them get revenge for Alex. But this movie front loads that all in the beginning, in the first act, when we have no idea what's going on still. Just like Marcus and Pierre, we don't know that they've killed the wrong guy because we have yet to see the right guy's face. The tunnel scene might be the single most brutal assault in any film that I have ever witnessed. The one-take style and the fact that the camera never moves or changes at all, it just forces us to sit there completely immobile, completely unable to help or even to leave. Unlike the guy during the scene who steps into the end of the tunnel that you see in the distance, he stands there for probably 3 to 5 seconds, sees what's going on, and just goes, nope, and then leaves. All of the happier scenes in the second half of the film are completely ruined by this foreboding, dark sense of doom that just hangs over everything. We can't even be happy for Alex when she finds out that she's pregnant because, as the movie reminds us, time destroys all things. At the end of the day, Gaspar Noe is similar to a filmmaker like Ari Aster in that both of them are capable of creating a technically and artistically just beautiful film, but those films are probably also going to ruin your day. So that pretty much wraps up my take on Gaspar Noé's Irreversible. But don't worry, there's more where that came from. In fact, somewhere over here, YouTube should be popping up some recommendations for videos I made for you sick freaks. So why not jump into one of those? Either way, I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video.